Good evening, Austin. Good evening, Austin. Thank you so much for joining. Good evening. Good evening, Favor as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please let's share the link. Please let's share the link so we can get everyone as much as possible to be a part of this. Really excited about this session. All right, so I'm just gonna kick it off this evening. Um, just gonna kick it off I'm just going to kick it off by just doing a brief introduction about who we are as a network. My name is George Arafan, first of all. Really, really privileged to have saw the need and felt the inspiration to kick off the Mind of Network. As a matter of fact, the network itself was born out of my own search for knowledge, search for understanding and clarity in terms of what it means to be a man in today's world, how and how and how to navigate those realities, and all the question and all the insult and all the insults that, of course, the and all the so-called insults that one gets insulted when one around the idea of being a man based on people's perception or preconceptions about and basically bias about essentially what it does means to be what it means to be a man by their own definition, and they expect you to then live by those by that preconception and those biases as well. So it is from how I began to how I began to navigate and also figure out the kind of man I want to be and the examples and models that exist or existed in my development and in my growth, right? So, and after a while, speaking to younger men, speaking to my friends, speaking to people just around, I realized that there is a real gap. There's a real gap in terms of the type of gender education when it comes to the subject of being a man. There is a lot of narrative, but there's no proper education. All right. So the Man Enough Network is a men's movement dedicated to redefining and restoring a healthy sense of male identity for young African men, Nigerian African men between the age of 8 to 45, 8 to 40, 45. Part of what we, part of what on, our focus is around having honest conversations, providing healing, building a principle centered, thriving community that equips men to lead confidently in today's business, social, and marital context, right? It's also a faith-based worldview, right? And we offer a lot of stability, a lot of clarity, and what we're trying to do is to provide education for men to embrace their leadership and remain steadfast and stable in a changing world. So our vision is to redefine and restore a healthy sense of male identity for young men. Um, the mission, the mission is to create a supportive community to guide men in navigating the tension between what it means to be traditional, to have traditional African values and modern global realities, to also offer resources, and meetings like this that promote personal growth, emotional healing, and restoration. It's also to empowerment, to embrace leadership in their home, workplace, and community with a lot of clarity and a lot of confidence. So that's essentially um, what what the Mind of Network is right now, what we're about. Part of our focus right now, part of our energy is around having these type of conversations for now. We're also currently growing our community where it's based, it's an online community on WhatsApp for now. We have a few men right now joining. We want to build that net. We want to build that from that group right now to become a real functional standalone network in the future with a lot of strong strong network among men, but also with a lot of great community where it can become a real advantage to be a part of that, to share resource, to grow, to learn, and to become better. So that's what the Man Enough Network is about. And this evening's focus, the conversation, this evening's focus and this evening's conversation is really around, it's about labels. Every man on this live session right now understand what it means to walk around with labels. You understand what it means to walk around with labels. You understand what it means to walk around with labels, right? You have been called all sort of names. You have been, you know, required to be all sort of things to all kinds of people, right? So a lot of that, a lot of, a lot of those labels. Some are great labels. Some are not so great. Some are about meeting other people's expectations of you as against living by your own set of values, your own set of vision, and your own drive to becoming the kind of man you want to be. So a lot of those labels are really, a lot of it is, unclarified, ununderstood, but all the same, you have to live by them. And the key thing is to begin to ask yourself, what have I come to believe about what it means to be a man in today's world? And how did I come about those definitions? And how did I come about those realities? Uh, so that becomes important. That becomes an important thing to think about. What have I come to believe and all that? So we're discussing labels and we're beginning from understanding patriarchy, chauvinism, toxic masculinity, and then the more cultural labels in Nigeria, like things like Odogu, intentional man, real man, and things that you are called every day. All right, things that you are called every day, things that you are asked to accept every day, without understanding the length and breadth of it, but you still have to sort of like defend your own space around sort of like those areas, right? So that's what we're going to be focusing on this evening, and please, if you check in, please do drop a comment or do like it or do share. Drop a comment, like, share, so that people in your community, people in your on your status, please share in your status, share in your groups, just share for more men so that more men can be a part of this and gain some insight into this subject. The big question somebody asked me was, why am I having this kind of conversation? My answer was very simple. This is an important conversation. This is an important conversation, right? The challenge is you walk into the primary mode of exchange for young males right now. The primary mode of exchange is digital, and the format with which we exchange ideas has evolved over the years. The formats with which we exchange ideas have evolved over the years. A lot of times, what you will find is someone can send you a 30 seconds video in response to something you said, as against just answering you. The person can just send you a 30 seconds video and say that that can be a funny skit, but it's a codified message. And that message can contain different layers of ideas and different layers of ideologies contained in a 20, 30 second skit. Your responsibility is to then decode what the person is saying, because how we communicate, how we interact within this space has changed. It has evolved over the years, right? So there's an overstimulation. There's an overload, and a lot of that overload is not built for your growth and your progress. A lot of times, a lot of it is just influenced by virality and monetization. And a lot of persons will do anything to just get off some viral content or put some viral ideas out there. That's all. There's no verification, no clarification, nothing. All right. So you find that primarily the mode of exchange, the mode of interaction has become digital. All right. And in that digital space, there are so many people putting information and ideas out there. All right. So many young men, so many young women. There is no conversation as nothing stirs up the young Nigerian environment and not young Nigerian digital space like the conversation of gender. If you want to start up a viral, Twitter has been shut down for days around as around the conversation of gender. Should a man do this? Should a woman do that? Can a man do this? Can a man not do this? Is a man supposed to? Is a woman supposed to? There's a gender hot seat within the digital interaction space of young Nigerian, male and female. There's a digital hot seat. There's a gender hot seat. Sorry, there's a gender hot seat. All right, the very conversation about the roles and responsibility, the power, the economic power, the social, political power, and even within the marital context, there's a strong gender hot. There's a gender hot seat, right? It's a hot topic when we begin to discuss the idea of male and female interaction. It's a hot topic. It has been hot. And it's not even new, right? It has been a hot conversation for a long time, right? As far back as the Bible, Solomon said, one of seven things that amaze him, seven things, yeah, seven things that he talked about the way of a man with a woman. So it's an age-long hot gender hot conversation. There's been an age-long, sort of like bottom point with when we discuss gender conversation. All right. And more you see words like patriarchy and chauvinism, and more and more this conversation is being thrown into the public space. More and more is being thrown into this public space. And more I interact with young people, I realize a lot of people do not even understand the history, the definition, the evolution of the words they are using. Toxic masculinity. And as a young man, it's important that you understand it when a person accuses you of being patriarchal or being chauvinistic or your masculinity being toxic. It's important as a young man that you understand what you are being accused of, that you understand how to navigate both the argument of it and to identify the behavior of it, such that you when somebody say you're being patriarchal, are you committing a crime? Are you doing something wrong? When somebody say you are being chauvinistic, what does that mean? When they say your masculinity has become toxic, because these have become the new buzzwords that is used in the gender conversation. And as a man, I think it's important you understand what is being said about your behavior, and within the general social context, what it means for you in that context, right? So whether a lady or your fellow man accuses you of being patriarchal or being chauvinistic, or your masculinity is being toxic, or even when they say things that we like to listen to, we like to hear, a lot of times we like to, when they call you an odogu, it's nice, you like to hear that, right? Or they call you because it became popular with the movie, all right? They call you odogu, or they call you a real man, or they call you an intentional man, or they call you a responsible man, or they even call you an infidel, by the misinterpretation, of course, of that scripture. They call you an infidel as a young man. What does it mean? Is it an insult? Or is it society's misunderstanding, or actually understanding and trying to manipulate the male perspective, and to really readjust that framework, that historical advantage, as they say, and then try to beat that down on you in our own generation. Right? So, it's important that you know what it means. Without proper definition, you cannot really articulate your position correctly. You cannot either defend your behavior or adjust your behavior in line with what is correct and what is true. A lot of times, what people, um, there's a sense of traditional definition of these things that has just been passed down, from one person to the other, or even me. A lot of it is also has just been put out there without any real research and real understanding of what it means. So a lot of times, young people, I meet people, I can see a trend of somebody addressing certain issues, and I know for a certain this person doesn't understand what this person is talking about. So we are going to get into a couple of those things right now. um I really don't want to cloud the screen, so with the slides, so I'm just going to be using my own slide and be following right now. Okay, so let us see. All right, so good evening, good evening, good evening. Oreo 81. I'm not sure your name, but good evening. Um, okay, so what we are going to breaking down is we're going to be able to understand the ideas of these labels. We're going to be analyzing how they shape your life, how they shape our life, sort of like recognize sort of like the modern distortions of these labels, and we're also going to build a constructive definition base for these labels as well. All right, so let's begin with the first one. The first one we are going to be discussing is patriarchy. All right, so what is patriarchy? Long and short, the linguistic foundation of it, long and short, is the patriarchy is by definition really the rule of the father. That's what it means, the rule of the father. And the Greek word is patrai, which is father, and akia, which is rule. So it's fatherly rule. Um, I don't want to get into like the long sort of like etymology of patriarchy, right? I don't want to begin to break that into the details of it, that big detail of it, right? But essentially, it's the male rule within the family structure. Now, there's something I want to actually highlight. Historically, the historical context of this is it's functioned as a specific family structure. It's originally functioned as a specific family structure and an economic system centered in inheritance. Right? So it's really about um, the structure to protect the family structure and then define and design the inheritance pattern as well and stuff like that. So, but that's historically. In today's world, it is interpreted as a rigid systemic power structure defining social and institutional hierarchy and giving men advantage. All right. Now there are subtle ways but the word patriarchy is thrown into the mix. All right. For instance, you hear someone say stuff like, the Bible is patriarchal or God is patriarchal. And you say we are living in a patriarchal society. All right. Economic opportunities, economic opportunities and economic, advantage seems to be dominated, and I'm using the word seems, right? Seems to be dominated and controlled by essentially male figures. And it's easy to say that. It's easy to look into the world and say, yes, a lot of men, it's easy to look into the world and say, yes, a lot of men are in position of power. It seems like it has been like that for generations. All right. Now, how did the world evolve to this point? Right? How did the world evolve to the point where it seems like like where it looks like men are sort of like in control of all resources and all that? It's important to note that we do live in a world where the real thing that is in control is power is in control, not men in that sense. Because No matter the society, no matter the region, no matter the state, no matter the community, power is in control. And it's important to understand that even 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 in a so-called male-dominated world, there are there are men who are lesser than in that society as well. There are men who you don't gain any real advantage just because you're a man in the real world. Now, in environments where resources are scarce, or even in environments where resource, education, exposure, opportunities are scarce, yes, you can find advantage in that sense, and you can manipulate small circles in that sense. But in a real world, in a real economic space, you don't gain any real tangible advantage from being a man. But it's important to understand where the criticism and the accusation, quote and unquote, of a patriarchal advantage in the larger society. Now, families globally, whether in religion, especially around religious ideology, families are shaped around the fatherly role, around the male role. Now, but it's important to understand how what it meant historically, what patriarchy did historically. And there are many school of thought, and I hope I'm able to touch some of them in the course of this. There are many school of thought. There are many school of thought around this idea, and it's important. Hopefully, I'm going to touch that. There are a lot of school of thought around the idea, but you have to understand historically the journey so far, right? A lot of men had to, you know, it had to be that you were able to defend, you were able to protect, literally, not figuratively. Not just be a provider and protector that we have a lot of time, protector figuratively right now in today's world. When the world was actually using the word protector for men, you literally had to literally protect your family physically. You have to protect your people physically. You have to do a lot of that, all right? And in doing that, you know, a lot of preference were given to people in that sense. Okay, you know what, you could protect, so be our voice, be the face, be everything that we needed you to be in that sense. All right. Now, in that generation, it was important for you, it was important for you to be that kind of a person. And women in that generation had to be at home. And then when you came back with whatever you went to provision, you had to go out together. And there are a lot of school of thought, and a lot of people can't the evolution. I'm going to touch that. All right. So you go out, you get a lot of you get, let's say, food and all that, and you came back, and then the people at home, which were the women at home, for whether for a small or a large family, had to then take that and create food and whatever. Now, as that evolved, right, men no longer had to go hunting, and the various traditional pillar upon which patriarchy was built. I don't believe that patriarchy is an evil thing. I do believe that people abuse the idea of it, and people expect some type of honor and some type of respect just because you're a man. That makes no sense to me in terms of our mode of engagement today, right? You are going to school with women, they are in your class, women are getting first class, you are getting third class, and you expect to gain some advantage. Makes no sense to me, right? So, like all ideologies, people can over push it, people can overdo it, and all that. So the evolution of patriarchy from that time where, you know, it was necessary for survivors of family, for a male figure to 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 face some, to have courage to go out and hunt and do things like that and protect and defend, and literally they can come into your house and dispossess you of your property literally without sort of like a strong man in that sense. All right. So at that point, that was not an issue because you could see that there was a partnership in it. There was a partnership in it that the person goes out and gets it, another person come, you know, is around to make it. It was still a partnership. All right. Now, where within social cycles, because it was always about family structure. Now, how it became an undertone ideology for shaping society was where it began to be distorted, right? And the early men who built, the early architects of our society figured out, right, that resources were scarce, and the only way to expand their own reach and expand their own power. And essentially, it was not because it was for every man; it was because a few men needed to protect their interests, so they devised social patriarchy to exclude women in a sense and preserved the economics of the group to a few men. Now, of course, it has by the time you extend that and stretch that into generation, it has become what it has become. So that you might agree, you might disagree, and it's fine, right? But essentially, this is the long and short of it. And another school of thought can say it was an invention of men. I don't think men gathered in a place and then they were discussing how they are going to subjugate women. It was just about how society evolved from that, rural hunter gathering society into building, architecting a new society. And the men in that time only evolved and developed this type of society, and they shared the resources among themselves and essentially kept women outside of that. And in that sense, you have to also understand at that time, women in that time did not participate in social activity at that time, but the world has evolved, right? And with the evolving world, families are still patriarchal. Now there are bits and pieces of different cultures where they are matrilineal cultures, but it's really about how is so there are cultures where you find sort of that interpret family structures through the matrilineal sense. But what I still find interesting in whether in those cultures or even in any type of culture is that whilst the traditional definition of patriarchy is being queried and being questioned in today's world, while the basic definition of patriarchy is being queried, but the traditional expectation of patriarchy is still expected from men in this world. And is that is the dilemma. Why? Because you don't want to give me quote and unquote the space based on historical definition of it, but the traditional expectation of it you want me to fulfill, in my day-to-day life. All right. So that's one of the few things around patriarchy. The next thing is, we talk about chauvinism. Chauvinism in itself has nothing to do with even male or female conversation. All right. And really, the root of the word is still in doubt, right? And it's gleaned from the man called Nicolas Chauvin. Now, Nicolas Chauvin historically nobody can really verify if it's a real figure or if it was a mythical figure, but it has entered into sort of like social conversation and it has become a thing, right? So we find that the guy Nicolas Chauvin was a soldier was a soldier under was a soldier who was legendary for his blind, excessive patriotism to his leader. All right. So now the evolution of it is a conceptual journey from the rigid nationalism to a group superiority, ultimately manifesting as male superiority. Right. So the evolution of it for something that had nothing, it was the guy Nicolas Chauvin was a very loyal Napoleon soldier. He was loyal to the French Revolution. I don't know what they call him revolutionists, but to the French military guy Napoleon. All right. So it was loyal enough that it became a thing that to be chauvinistic meant to be loyal and to be excessively patriotic. Now, that word about patriotism and loyalty and excessive loyalty and all that grew from that root word to become something to has evolved into this modern slander in a sense where if you chauvinism in sense of can you hold the door where you sort of like want to treat women in a type of way, and there are good chauvinism and there are bad chauvinism, and people will come to expect you to do the good chauvinism, but by that same context, not do the quote unquote bad chauvinism, right? So the modern reality of the word chauvinism has become a belief in systematic dominance stripped of the weight of individual responsibility. Well, being chauvinistic is now about a lot of like where I don't understand is people who have turned it into hatred of women and how it has become a lack of empathy towards women and things of that nature. All right, so you need to understand some of these words historically did not mean what it has come to mean today. Historically, it didn't mean that. Historically, they were all, in a sense, in the context of when this word became a thing, it was a normal word. I mean, of course, it was an okay word. All right, so now it's important that social patriarchy is an economic idea. It's an economic necessity. It's not a social ideology, right? It's an economic. It evolved in it's evolved by as an economic necessity, right? Land ownership and resource accumulation. And what drove social patriarchy was land ownership and resource accumulation, inheritance control to ensure lineage continuity in terms of family, survival structures built for resource defense. It is not a natural law. Patriarchy is not a natural law. It's not a law of gravity, right? It's not Newton law of motion. It's not a cast in stone law. Um, that's why it culture to culture, differs slightly in terms of right. So it's not a principle. It's not a cast in stone natural law, but an adoptive system designed based on specific historical constraint. Right. It was a time in history, and it became a thing. And then, of course, with historical events, you'll find that at once a time in history, something became a thing. A time in history, it's difficult to then understand how it evolved and how it became what it became. What we have to, and that's really the core. I wouldn't want to stay too long on some of these things, right? What is the core for me is in today's world. How do we navigate it in today's world? Maybe not forget, but yes, regardless of the historical context, regardless of how things have evolved over the years, how do young men in today's world navigate this thing when somebody tells you are being patriarchal? What does it mean now in today's world? That will be my focus. I just wanted to give a little bit of historical depth to it as we continue to go forward. All right. So the Nigerian context as well is important to understand. In Nigerian context, all right, a vast spectrum of societal organization ranging from the structured centralized authority of Yoruba kingdoms to the decentralized egalitarian systems of the Igbo community, right? A lot of it is driven by social patriarchy in that sense. All right. Now you also have to understand that the deliberate imposition of you cannot remove colonial impact because African the African evolution was interrupted. I believe so strongly that Africa was interrupted. We did not evolve fully from our own sense of understanding of what our ancestral fathers and mothers held to be true. We were interrupted. So you cannot discuss this type of conversation right now without that aspect of it. We were interrupted. All right. So the you cannot much of what we currently label as tradition is in historical reality a colonial destruction. It's a mixture. It's a mixture. A lot of it is a mixture, right? Um, Designed to facilitate administrative control. All right. Why does this matter? Why does this conversation matter? All right. Your identity is the lens through which you experience reality. And when that lens is manufactured by external forces, you are not living, you are executing a script. All right. So it's important when how you your identity is the lens through which you experience reality. So it's important for you to understand when you accept certain identity definition, identity sprint. Where do those identity come from, and how exactly did that identity come to be? So those are important conversations that's why we're extracting this. That's why this is an important conversation to be having in today's world. And whether you like it or not, in this country, on this continent, one way or the other, somebody will accuse you of being patriarchal. Somebody will accuse you of being chauvinistic. And somebody will call your masculinity toxic. And somebody will call you Odogu. And the comfortable ones, a lot of men like it. A lot of men like to be called Odogu. A lot of men like to be called an intentional man. But those are definitions that fulfill the expectations of other people. And I believe them so strongly that these are definitions and labels that fulfill the expectations of other people. All right. So to understand the complexity of modern masculinity, we must apply multidimensional lens. We must look at it through the multidimensional lens. All right. There's, the African philosophy. We must look at it through leadership theory. We must also consider what the feministic and feminism critique is. Why do what led to the rise of the feministic outcry and movement in contrast to the patriarchal and the masculine journey and evolution of society. You must understand that anywhere resources are few, women always get less. Everywhere resources are few, women always get less. And this is historically true. This is historically true. Everywhere resources are few, women always get less. This is historically true. All right. So I'm trying to run through some of these things so that we can get to some of the important conversion that I want to truly, truly emphasize. All right. Some of the things it's important for young men who's watching now who are going to watch this later. It's important for me to actually point something out for you, right? A lot of your male gender education is weak. A lot of how you became educated in terms of what it means to be a man is weak, or is incorrect, or is untrue. All right. So from a young age, you begin to hear men don't cry, or are you not a man? Not are you not a, not are you not it's not about whether you are growing up or you're not growing up. You hear things like, are you not a man? Are you not don't be a man? Men don't cry. The men don't behave like that. From a young age, you hear a man telling a younger man, is that how you're going to treat your wife? All right. So they center you around the expectation, of the opposite gender, and the expectation of society as large around what it means for you to grow up to become a man. Right. So you can understand that kind of framing for a young child, for a young guy growing up right now, or for a young child growing up, and the basic education you have about what it means to be a man is centered around the expectation of others concerning you, not necessarily your development and growth in that sense, but around the expectation of other people and how you are going to care and cater for other people. Now, primarily at its core, I find it to be interesting, that type of education. I find that type of education to be interesting because it unlocks a high sense of responsibility and agency in a young man very early. Now, for in a healthy dose, that's fair. In a healthy dose, it is fair. It is fair in a healthy dose. That level of high sense of responsibility for a man, it's in a healthy dose, is fair. But when it becomes a hyper agency, where you then think that everything must evolve, and then you begin to get a larger than life sense of the world, you think that you have some type of innate power for being a man, then that education becomes the problem. Because in a healthy sense, every child, male and female, must be raised with a high sense of responsibility in terms of their responsibility and agency. They must understand that they have a responsibility to navigate their way through the world to gain the kind of result that they need. And that nothing will be given to you just because you are a guy. And essentially, nothing should or will be given to you just because you're a woman. Every child should grow up having that type of education. But where the gender education and the gender information complex creates a lot of problem is that it creates a hyper agency for a man and make him weakens his sense of the world and ties his esteem to the expectation of others, and primarily really the expectation of women. Right? Imagine telling a 7-year-old that is growing up, is that how you're going to take care of a woman? Imagine telling a 15-year-old that. Imagine telling a 20-year-old that. All right. And what it does for him, that, you know what, so a lot of my esteem will always come from my ability to provide essentially to provide for women. All right. So that gender education is horrible, and we must dissuade from that. For that's part of why I'm having this kind of conversation, because we don't necessarily understand the depth of it and the kind of men that we are raising in the next 10, in the next 20 years. We don't understand the kind of men that we're raising in the next 20 years, in the next, all right. So understand that, see that for what it is, see that, understand that, and see that for what it is. All right. So that's very important. Okay. So there are labels that I find interesting. I find the Odogu label interesting because what does it mean? I mean, what does it mean really? Uh, I find the real man interesting. The real man is the most interesting label I find interesting within Nigerian context, right? Because what they are telling you is that you meet their standard, you meet their own standard, right? And you must understand what that means. You meet the standard. The intentional man, I like that as well because it means that you meet a particular standard set by a particular sort of people. That's what they are saying, right? So when you find now, when you find you know labels like a odogu and a real man and perfect gentleman and a kind man and a nice man, there are all kinds of labels. And I don't my concern is not about what you are called. My concern of is really about the kind of man that you are. The kind of man that you are. That's really my own concern. The kind of man that you are, not the definition and label that society approves or don't approve. My concern is the kind of man that you are. The kind of man that you are. All right. Now it's easy to be an odogu and to be an intentional and a real man when you are financially capable. So does that mean that you cannot be a real man or an intentional man or an odogu without the financial capacity to meet the needs and the taste of the person who is labeling you that, or who is creating that as an expectation for you? All right. Now we are living in crazy economic times, and whether you like it or not, all power does not respond to everybody in the same way into this world. Both economic power, both political power, both social power does not respond to everybody in the same way. All right. So you have to then define how to navigate your way around those labels so that you don't become entrapped by another person's expectations of you and then live a life and run yourself to the ground. So you don't become entrapped by these labels and this definition and then run yourself to the ground in a world that is begging you and essentially manipulating you to live by their own standard. All right. So, and a lot of men, and when it comes to economic responsibility, for instance, a lot of men cannot be men outside of that. And at one point in your life, you would have to navigate your masculinity outside of your ability to produce financially. At one point in your life, you have to navigate that. So you have to have the education right now, because at one point in your life, you have to defend your masculinity and defend your masculinity without a sense of your ability to provide or your ability to meet the expectations of others. I mean, that's a weight that even psychologically is unfair, psychologically is unnecessary for you to carry. To live your life essentially by the expectation of others or essentially by the expectation of women. That cannot be how you live your life. Now, when you live your life intentionally in that sense, now meeting people's expectation is not even the issue here. For the people who you care about, whether you're a male or female, you have a responsibility to meet the needs of people you care about, or the people who look up to you, or the people who draw strength and inspiration from you. You have a responsibility to do that, and that's fair. But to make that a standard of honor and a standard of respect in today's world, we cannot do that to ourselves as men. We cannot hold ourselves to that level. Whether you can provide it or whether you cannot provide it, you must have the right to not do so. You must have the right to not do so. All right. So, also masculinity in a sense as well. All right. At what point does masculinity become toxic? All right. Should your masculinity serve the whims and caprices of everybody who demands from you? If you have some type of strength about you, as your masculinity become toxic, to me, masculinity becomes toxic only when it overrides the rights of others. Now, I can respect your right, but I do not have to participate in it. I can respect your right. I can respect your right to anything. Masculinity, patriarchy, or chauvinism impact men as well. All right. So it's important to know that it impacts on men as well. All right. So I can respect your right, but I do not have to participate in that in the context of that right. All right. So at what point does the person's masculinity become toxic? If I have some strength about me, if I do not bend to your whims, have I become if my as my masculinity become toxic if I don't bend to your whims? If I if I insist to live by a standard and I don't cave to your demands or your expectation, as my masculinity become toxic, if I pursue my visions and my dreams and I do not depend on your approval or consider it necessary to bow or to open myself to your demands and your needs, whoever you are, have I become toxic in that sense? No, I believe that masculinity only become toxic when you override and overrule or impact on the right of others to be themselves, the safety of others, right, and the economic rights, political rights of others in within whether within the family space or within the social context. That is the only time when a person's masculinity has become toxic. But I guarantee you that you would need one way or the other to defend your masculinity and to hold it to be true in your life. You need it. You need it because everywhere society has people complaining, they are complaining because of a man who is neglecting his masculinity. And I say this boldly that everywhere women complain is because a man in that area is neglecting his masculinity. Now, if everywhere women complain or everywhere weakness exists in a society in that sense, if everywhere it happens and a man is because a man is neglecting his own masculinity or is holding his masculinity with fear, everywhere it happens is because a man's masculinity is being neglected. Now, why not just embrace it, right? And then anybody can criticize you in that sense, but we need more men to be men in that sense, all right? To embrace the responsibility of your masculinity, all right? You have to have the vision, you have to have the strength of character to defend both things, right? So now anybody can spin anything they want, but your masculinity does not become toxic just because you are friend or even just because you raise your voice. All right, no, I don't think so. Your masculinity does not become toxic just because you raise your voice, or no, just because you become firm, or just because you do not cave to the whims and caprices of a woman or of anybody, even of your fellow men. All right. Now, as long as you do not overrule a person's right to earn, a person's right to be an individual and to do their own thing, as long as you don't override that and you don't cause harm on that person on the basis of your gender strength or your gender positioning now. As long as you don't do that, I do not believe that your masculinity has become toxic. Now, within the relationship context, a lot of men do not understand what it means within the relationship context to love and to love from a sense of strength from their masculinity, or even to carry out their patriarchal to carry out uh, to put patriarchal imprint in their close family cycle. A lot of men don't even understand what it means. All right. So let's see if we can run through a couple of things. Now, there's something I want to say about the rise of the manos. This thing, there's a thing called manosphere, made popular by people like what's this guy's name? A lot of people online, begin to tell men, the core theme of Manosphere is a digital native phenomenon that has fundamentally altered the landscape of contemporary male identity and social discourse. So the Manosphere thing, right, is at their core themes is anti-feminist sentiment, rejection of modern gender equality narratives, systemic distrust, cynicism towards traditional institutional structure, status seeking, focus on dominance, wealth, and hyper masculine performance. A notable transition from seeking integration in traditional social and romantic frameworks toward voluntary withdrawal, often framed as strategy for self-preservation and personal autonomy. The manosphere thing is I find to be interesting, right? Because a lot of it comes from a very warped sense of, again, hyper masculinity, where men are the kings, they rise from the great pharaoh, whatever word they are using these days, right? To me, untrue. Just it's just it's just a lot of things that don't make sense, right? It's just a lot of things that makes absolutely no sense. Okay, so a lot of it is just, I think it's just about the virality of it, and people, it becomes popular. People like to use that to gain traction. You just come online and say, and my own concern for this hyper masculinity thing is its impact on family. It is impact on family. No person who believe in that hyper masculine reality being perpetrated by these manosphere architects. Those people, nobody who believes truly in that can truly raise a family. I believe so, so strongly, right? But I can understand, the thing is spreading because it addresses some real pain, right? While criticized for his rhetoric, the growth of the manosphere is rooted in the genuine, unaddressed anxiety of a specific demographic. It gains traction by providing concrete explanation for the lived experience of so many men, right? The economic pressure and some of those pain points that the manosphere people highlight is the stagnating wages and loss of traditional blue collar stability, which a lot of times belongs to men. Men are losing their jobs, all right, and within this new economic frame. All right, and not just men, a lot of people, there's a real economic downturn globally. So men, by extension, a lot of people are losing their job. There's a lot of identity confusion, a passive loss of clear social roles and masculine archetype. All right. There's a confusing thing now. The narrative is shifting from pillar to post. There's no clear there's no clear social rules. Yeah, a man had to go out in the morning and come back in the evening. All right. So many men are in their house right now, working 9 to 5 remotely. All right. So a friend of mine was telling me his kid was asking him that in the school they were teaching them that as in men go out and women stay at home. Some of our social studies are still very backwards, anyways. But and the kid came on and asked him, because he says 9 to 5 and works in the house. He works remotely because he's in tech and he's able to work remotely. But his wife has a traditional 9 to 5 job. So the wife goes out and comes back in the evening and he stays home all the time. And he was reminding me, not just his child, that his neighbor used to make use of him, and things like that. Because there's no clear social rules anymore. Right? It used to be a very clear, solid social rule where a man did this and a woman did that. So, but that is changing. Or now is that has changed so much in so many ways, right? So a perceived loss of that clear social rule and masculine archetype, right? So there are no masculine archetypes anymore in terms of, you look up to your dad because your dad, did this. And then now you are now living in a world where the things that your dad used to do is now being frowned on socially. You can lose political office, you can lose a job from saying things that your father used to say casually in open public places. We can see many men have lost their jobs, they have lost their role, they have lost their businesses from something they tweeted 10 years ago. Just to show you how the vast difference in the new society that we're living in. A guy had lost his business because of certain things he tweeted many years ago. We are living in a different world from what it used to be 10 years ago. Now, a lot of it is just political posturing, but it's still realistic. It's still a part of the world we're living in, right? So there are no social rule, there are no masculine archetypes anymore. What it used to mean to be a man is being discalculated, disconstructed, and destroyed every day. There are attempts every day to take masculine archetypes and social political rules, what used to be social political rules, every day right now, they are being dismantled and destroyed. And that's the world that you have to be a man in. And you have to find some type of stability for yourself, right? And that's why I'm having this kind of conversation. I'm going to be having more conversations like this. Men at work, men in love, men making money. We're going to have those breakdown step by step conversations around what it means to be a man. What I would not do is, put out fluffy conversations and have childish conversations around these kind of things, right? So the manosphere thing, they were spreading because a lot of it is really clear, real issues, right? And they took advantage of those real issues. Right? There's also a lack of mentorship, a vacuum left by the decline of traditional community structures as well. When there are no social roles and there are no masculine archetypes to model, It means you cannot create a mentorship pipeline for young men, right? So there's a vacuum left by a decline of traditional community structure. More there's we are more connected, but we are still more fragmented at the same time, right? It's a contradiction how connected we are, but how fragmented we are as well. So that's very important. That's also very important to note. So they were addressing real pains. And there's also a deep social isolation, a breakdown of physical community in digital age. Now we cannot even this we cannot say too much about this. There's a real isolation. There's a real isolation because now we touch ourselves digitally. Now we connect digitally and we are not interacting, as much as we used to do around those things. All right. So, but the core problem for me for this manosphere thing and this hyper masculinity conversation because it's always swinging from one extreme to the other, all right? And that's one of the things about social engineering and social evolution is that it swings from one extreme to the other, all right? So, but part of the extreme that this thing is switching from right now to me is right. Part of the extreme is and the core problem with this thing is that it blames the wrong casual factors. When you hear a lot of times they blame women, they are blaming some 1% of the world that control everything behind the scene. They blame Illuminati and all that. Now, there's I'm not here for to defend or to debunk conspiracy theories, but that's what the manosphere blame. They say the reason why men are becoming weak and childish and it is because they are not. It's because of that 1% of people controlling that they promote resentment rather than resolution, and they actively block personal and collective growth in that sense. And the danger is that it replaces critical inquiry into rigid ideologies. All right. So the contemporary Nigerian social landscape is currently defined by a volatile intersection of really traditional heritage and globalized digital subcultures. This friction point creates significant psychological and social tension, and that's true, right? The contemporary Nigeria, we are a mixture. Nigeria is a melting pot of UK ideology, US ideology, Canadian ideology, mixed with our own traditional ideology, and young men don't even understand where to stand anymore. Young men don't know where to stand. They don't know which one is true, which one is not true. All right. Right now, it's just a mixture. It's just a mixture. All right. Traditional patriarchy focuses on provision. All right. Patriarchy, when it favors, society, and it's okay. Traditional patriarchy in Nigeria, this friction points creates significant psychological and social tension within the gender conversation, right? Traditional patriarchy focuses on provision, leadership, protection, dominance within the family unit in that sense. Traditional patriarchy, and there's an expectation that once I do that, then everybody must bow down to my reign. And once I provide, once I protect, I don't know if you can protect it because they point a gun to you. Are you going to go and collect the bullets? Right. So traditional patriarchy overrates those things in that sense. But within the traditional expectation in that exchange, that's okay for those who expect that from you. Right. The management encourages withdrawal, distrust in institutions, and radical self-protection. There is a widespread confusion and internal contradiction and fragmented. There's a widespread confusion around this conversation. All right, this is why there's so much argument around it. I remember when Twitter had a conversation about this gender thing for 4 days, different things here and there. There's a reason why it's deeply confusing and it's also deeply viral when this conversation is used. All right, so redefining the modern standard by moving beyond outdated archetype and embracing a holistic approach to character development. That has to be sort of like that has to be how you move towards authentic masculinity. You must do so by moving beyond outdated archetypes. What's the word archetypes? Archetypes are like model body types, right? They are like an archetype is how you define a group. It's a figurative definition of a group or a set. All right. So if you want to use a providing male as an archetype to define all male, they are going to create a lot of problems, right? Because every first of all, that archetype will not be the same across board because everybody will not have the capacity to provide at the same way across board, right? And everybody will not be able to do that at the level at which is consistent for that to be an archetype as well. All right. So we have in pursuit of authentic masculinity, you have to really, really x-ray these labels that is used and then move away from outdated archetypes and embrace holistic approach to your character and your development. All right. You have to also reject reactional ideologies that limit personal growth and social cohesion. All right. You have to also integrate traditional responsibility with high level emotional intelligence. You have to do all these things. All right. And part of what this thing means is that you have to really develop yourself and understand your vision, understand your values, understand what you're trying to, the kind of a man you're trying to be. It has to be clear from you from as early as possible so that you can defend that value and that vision in light of so many conflicting ideologies and so many conflicting masculine archetype that is being presented to you. You can meet a man in the office who tells you that you can never, as a man, you can never do XYZ. Meanwhile, you can meet another man in church who says to be a man, you must do that same XYZ. So you see that there are no real solid, steady archetypes that define what it means to be masculine and to be male in today's world anymore. It's just a revolving door. It's a revolving door. It's just a revolving door right now. And it depends on where you stand in that revolution of the all right. So you also have to build sustainable, you have to build relationships that are rooted in mutual respect and clear communication. That's not hard to do. These things are not hard to do. These are not hard to do, right? One of the hardest things to do right now is to deconstruct performative archetypes, like to deconstruct, you know, masculine archetypes that is based on performance. It's one of the hardest things to do because it has eaten into what it means really to be men in this world. As in, I can't think of a time where a man is not judged by what he performs or how he performs, whether sexually, whether financially, whether emotionally, even whether maturedly. Are you performing matured and all that? So it's hard to deconstruct that. So since it's hard to deconstruct that, then you have to master it, and you have to master it by being the best version of you that you can be, not for anybody's entertainment or not for anybody's expectation, but for your own understanding of where you are going and how you want to get there. That's all that has to be important to you right now moving forward. All right. So what are the pillars of authentic masculinity? You have to be strong and self-aware. When I mean strong, it's not physical. You have to be emotionally and mentally strong, and you have to be self-aware. All right. You have to be grounded within a particular sense of personal truth. Now, you have to be strong mentally and you have to be self-aware. You have to be strong and self-aware in the sense that you have to have you have to understand, you have to have clear knowledge of yourself, you have to have clear knowledge of the world you are living in, and you have to understand how those two knowledge base interact to provide for you agency and power to execute on the earth. You have to have a clear knowledge of yourself, then you have to have a clear understanding and knowledge of, again, self-awareness in three levels. One is knowledge of yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your patterns, your mental models, the level of intelligence that you have, and your capabilities, your academicness, the capability that you have in your academics, and how that plays out in the world. You have to have a clear understanding of yourself. Are you phlegmatic? Are you, so much as I don't like those things anyways, but it's just true. Are you phlegmatic? Are you this? Are you that? You have to have knowledge of yourself. You have to know yourself. No human being should know you more than you know you. You have known you more than any other person in the world. So nobody should know you more than you know you. All right. So it's important that you have clear knowledge of yourself. Number two, you have to have knowledge of the world you are living in. You have to have niche knowledge of the world you are living in, practical knowledge of the world you are living in. It has to be clear. It has to be direct. You have to understand, where are you playing in? What space are you playing in? Do you understand? Are you a doctor? Are you a pharmacist? Are you an engineer? You have to have knowledge of those things in terms of how the world rewards and how the world judge. You have to understand social laws. You have to understand that this is what self-awareness is. And then you have to understand that the combination of those two determines the quality of agency that you have. And nothing is achievable for you on this earth outside of your understanding of and the execution of your agency. So, how do you build authentic masculinity? You have to be grounded in a personal truth. You have to be grounded in some level of truth personally, in your awareness, socially and personal, self-awareness, social awareness, and your agency. Those three things have to be top. It has to be clear for you, and then you have to be strong mentally. And this is really, that's what mental strength is: self-awareness, social awareness, and execution of your agency. All right. You have to understand that there's a provision is a spectrum. Provision is a spectrum, and you have to be able to define your masculinity across all the spectrum and grade yourself carefully across that spectrum. Oh, but you will provide, and everybody on this earth will provide something. Now, for a man, society has expectation of you to provide around a certain things, but you have to redefine provision as a spectrum. You have to redefine provision as a spectrum. And that redefinition must understand that you will provide, you will provide energy, you provide time, you provide leadership, you provide your presence, you are apt to provide so many things to gain stability, to gain some type of honor and respect in the world. You have to provide it. You have to provide intelligence, you have to provide guidance, you have to provide emotional support, you have to provide your authenticity, you have to provide your vision, you have to provide your leadership. Provision has to be a spectrum. It cannot just be about one. And you cannot be 100% across all the spectrums of provision. You will not be 100%, but you should have a good, you have to have a good measure across board. And you must understand, which to provide at what time and what is necessary at what time. But every human on this earth will be judged by what they provide. You will be respected by what you provide. You'll be honored by what you provide. That label is not wrong, but you cannot hold yourself and entrap yourself necessarily to one aspect of it. It's important. So that's how you pursue authentic masculinity. You must embrace the idea that you will provide something, and what you are providing must be across the spectrum of provision. It must be time, it must be energy, it must be guidance, it must be wisdom, it must be strength, it must be emotional stability. You must provide every single thing you are capable of providing across the spectrum of provision. Now, there will be some that want to kick you down for not being able to provide financially, and that's fair. That's fair because we're in an economic charged world. But as you continue to grow, as you continue to build, you will find opportunity and you will grow. All right. So it's not a life sentence. You might be in a position now where you're incapable of that provision. Provide what you can. Provide across, find a need within the spectrum of provision and feel it. And feel it very well. And then embrace what comes with it and find strength in what you are capable of doing. You have to be able to influence, you have to be able to build your leadership and your authority through influence as against through relying on I'm a man. I personally I've not found that idea to be true. That I've not found it to be true that you get anything special from being a man. Sorry. I've not found it to be true. I've not found it to be true. I do understand that society is framed in a way where there is an unsaid advantage. There's an unsaid room and audacity for being men. There's an unsaid, but on ground and on the ground, you have to prove yourself. You have to prove yourself. You have to prove yourself. All right. So regardless of what type of traditional masculine archetype you grew up under, regardless of traditional patriarchal system that you grew up under, all right, you must understand where the world is right now and how to navigate it. You must understand where the world is right now and how to navigate it. And you must understand that you are now responsible for your own peace. And you have to really work out both the type of family you want to lead, the type of business you want to, the kind of business leader you want to be, the kind of political leader you want to be, as it underpins this idea of patriarchy and chauvinism and masculinity and every other label that we use right now across our society. You have to define what kind of a man you want to be. And regardless of the kind of archetype that you grew under, you might have grown under a you know traditional, I'm a man. Your mother brought food to your mother. Your mother brought food to the table for your father. Probably even knelt down and served him, and you might have seen that growing up, and that's the kind of sort of like masculine archetype you grew up under. You must have grown up under a real toxic masculine figure that got physical and harm and actually inflict physical pain on a woman, on a woman, or even on his children, male or female. So you can see that toxic masculinity does not just impact on women alone; it impacts on your fellow men. All right. So you might have grown up under that kind of masculine archetype, that type of experience. You have that kind of experience, right? You might have grown up on that type of experience, and that can impact on you. And think that you get into the world and expect that, and then you meet rude awakening and rude shock where women are actually, and in that and for that power structure within that type of masculine archetype to thrive, women will have very little or no economic power, right? And and you will find today the conflict, some deep seated conflict where men are unable to adjust in environments where women have economic power. That 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 means that that masculinity has become toxic, where your fear or disrespect or even a motive for inflicting pain on another person or depriving another person their respect and due honor is because they have economic power and they are women. That has to be a very, very weak and foolish idea in today's world. It has to be a very, very weak and foolish idea. All right. It has to be a very, very weak and foolish idea for you to say to yourself that that person does not deserve my respect because they're a woman, and this person deserves my respect because he's a man. It makes no sense to me, and it makes no sense if you scale it, if you put the idea of what if we debate the idea with you, can you where will you take it to? How will you what will be your point for this kind of ideas? Right? It makes no sense to me. All right. So you have to you have to be able to separate a person's wisdom from the agenda and a person's sensibilities from the agenda. All right. They are very foolish men and they are very foolish women, and that's a fact. And none of them is safe just because they're a man, or none of them is better just because they're a woman. All right. So that has to be your approach in life. That has to be your approach across board. All right. You must judge a person by the content of their wisdom and the content of their strength, not just because they are male or they are female. You must embrace that type of thinking in today's world. Otherwise, you are going to have a lot of problems. All right. And I tell a lot of young men right now, you are growing up in a world where you are going to meet a lot of women that have more money than you. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? As in, what are you going to do? Beat them? How many women are you going to beat? They are going to lock you up. In the next 20, you think women are getting economic, making economic progress right now? Imagine what it will be like in the next 10 years. Imagine what it will be like in the next 20 years. So you have to really review what you think traditional patriarchy and patriarchal social roles are. You have to reimagine them. Now, patriarchy is not going to go away in my own sense, in terms of the underlying sense of social acceptance of, because a lot of it is supported in a lot of religion. I'm a Christian and I understand how the framing of it looks within that scope. But if you really, really understand, a lot of men emphasize on an aspect of that scripture because for generations, men are the loudest voice within that kind of conversation. And they emphasize a particular part of this Bible that emphasize submit and submit and submit. But if you read that scripture, if you spread it well and you read it more properly, you will find that men actually have, in a sense, the hardest role and the hardest command within the family context. I believe so. Men have the highest, the steepest responsibility. Literally, the model Christ told you to love like him. When the height of his own love was literally to go and hang himself for everybody, and he's telling you to love like that. And that's a burden that you must carry within the family structure. So I find that there's a distorting of the values that is embedded in the idea of patriarchy, and the social evolution of it has become the main criticism. And I understand that, and I can understand that sort of like protecting resource for a few, and those few happen to be men in that sense. I know that, but again, it's about power now, right? Because those few people don't share with everybody, whether you're a man or a woman. Nobody gives you any, nobody gives you wealth because you are male. And if you find, statistics that shows, high death rates and all that across men, across the male gender demographic as well. All right. So you have to review what it means, the traditional patriarchal position in family structure. You have to review that. You have to think through all those things as a man in today's world. You have to think through all this. You have to accept a higher level of responsibility. In the next 10 years, there will be the ratio between how much women earn and how much men earn will be close. It's going to close more and more, because right now, the more women earn money and the more they are creating funds for female businesses. Right now, there are a lot of there are there are billions of dollars globally assigned for female businesses. So that means there's a global agenda to bridge the the opportunity gap for women, and more those global institutions, global organizations are providing that. Now you can fight that. You can say, how about the male child? And yes, that can be a real argument. But how about the male child? But the reality is these things are happening. And you have to navigate your way around all those things. You have to ask yourself, so are you saying that in the next 5 years, or your colleagues who learned what you learned in school and are competing for the same job that you are competing for, who are women, who are getting those jobs who are getting the job they are vying for, what, you're not going to marry people like that? You're not going to love them? You're not going to respect them? You're not going to honor them and accept the value and the wisdom that they provide to society? You're going to what? Throw that away? No, you are going to wake up in a world that you do not recognize if you remain like that. Or as a young man, you talk about weird traditional patriarchal, archetypes that you want to hold to be true. Nah, you have to reimagine all these things. You have to reimagine your leadership as a man in that world, in this new world that we're in. You have to reimagine it. It has to be both. You have to temper those two things. You have to, yeah, accept that responsibility, and you have to understand the kind of power you have to give away. You have to manage clear communication with empathy. You have to combine you have to combine your leadership with the ability to earn influence. You have to combine all these things. You have to see all these things clearly, and this is the world you have to live in. All right, this is the world you have to live in, and I'm speaking specifically to men because I know what it looks like right now. All right, the narrative, the conversation, and you cannot go through social media right now without some video of a man or a woman educating you what it means to be a man, educating you, the word as a man. If you put it on the Google search, the amount of video that you are going to see from both male and female as a man now, as a man, if you did have been as a video. And I find it that is necessary that sane voices must make clear contribution to these narratives and put information out there that is both helpful, that is both educational, and that is both inspiring, that is both inspirational. Right? And that's what I'm attempting to do. I'm not attempting by any stretch to say that I'm the most important voice in this conversation, or even that if everything I've said is 100%, sort of like, but it's just to lend my own voice to this conversation and to lend sort of like this idea that this new world we're living in, and how easy it is to throw words like patriarchy. We're in a patriarchal world, and you are being chauvinistic, and your masculinity is being toxic, and you are an odogu. Are you an odogu? Are you an intentional man? Are you a real man? It's easy to throw all these words around. It's easy to throw them at men, at young men. It's easy to throw it around, and a lot of young men don't understand what this word is. And I'm just trying to have a conversation around it, right? Just have to put this out there for you as a young man. I hope you find it. I hope you find small values in here and there, at least here and there in this conversation. I hope you truly, truly, truly find some value for yourself in this conversation. But I hope that you take a responsibility to educate yourself, or for the most cases, to re-educate yourself. I hope you take personal responsibility to educate yourself around this conversation. And don't just assume that you know what this word means. Don't just assume that I'm a real man, I'm an intentional man. What does it mean? A lot of it is about meeting other people's expectation. I'm not a real man by that definition. I'm not really an intentional man by that definition. I'm not a odogu by anybody's definition. I'm not a what's the other words that people use? I'm not any of those things. I'm a man. I am a man, and that's enough. I am a man. I don't need any other adverb. You see adverb? You see adverb or adjective? I don't need any other adjective to qualify the kind of man that I am. I am a man, and that's enough. I am a man, and that's enough. Not an intentional man, not an odogu, not a real man, not a nice man. No, I am a man. And if I hold myself accountable to the roles, responsibility, and education of what it means to be a man, that will be enough. That will be enough in any generation, in any context, in any community, and anywhere in the world. It will be enough. If I hold myself responsible to what it means to be a man, that is going to be enough. It's enough. I don't need any other adjective to qualify me. Now, a certain context might determine that I behave in a particular way. And certain positions in society and in my family and in my church, and depending on the core roles that I play, might determine that I behave in a type of way. I will behave like that. But I do not need any other adjective from any other person to qualify me or to qualify the kind of man I can be or I should be. I am a man, and that is enough. So I'm challenging you right now to embrace the education that it takes to be a man. Embrace it. It is never ending and it is always changing. I'm challenging you to embrace the education, to read books. You have been a man for 25 years, for 30 years, for 40 years, for 50 years, and you have never read one book or one article or watch a long form video about what it means to find male gender education. You have not. And you have been a man for 20 years and somebody loves you. And somebody trusts you to lead them. The very nature of how we speak about love and family shows you how patriarchy works. I'm saying that somebody trusts to lead them. There's a social, cultural, and even religious expectation that you are going to lead. Why not just take that as an honor and as a response? Take responsible accountability around that kind of idea where there's a deference to you as a man. There's a deference socially, religious, within many religious contexts. There's a deference to you as a man within the family structure. Now, society is a different ballgame. There's no real difference within the social context and the economic interactive space. Because if you're a medical doctor and a woman is a medical doctor, both of you are vying for the role. If she's better than you, they will employ her. And if you are sulking at that, then something is wrong with your psyche. Now, but within the family structure, it's a different thing. That's why I say historically, patriarchy was restricted within the family rule. But social patriarchy is a different ballgame. It's an evolution. It's an economic theory. It's a social. It's not a natural law. It's a social theory. Now, patriarchy has its roots deeper in other things. But come on, and you have to pursue gender re-education about what it means for you today to be a man. In this space, you have to take high responsibility. You have to take that as an honor that a woman wants to subconsciously will defer to you, subconsciously. Both from biblical text, both from many religious, cultural contexts, there's going to be deference towards you. There's going to be deference towards you. There's going to be deference towards you. But you have to take that with honor. You have to take that with responsibility. And you have to say that I will handle this with a lot of wisdom, with a lot of strategy, with a lot of tact, and with a lot of clarity and education. I will handle it with a lot of education. That's why you have to take real responsibility for that type of honor within the family context. Anyway, now within the social context, you have no choice. You have no choice. The rules of capitalism or socialism or social capitalism, whatever economic theory you are functioning in, the rules apply all the time. Now, there are underlying both patriarchal and chauvinistic underlying games that plays out in certain rooms and in certain spaces. I can accept that. But even in those spaces, what you will find now more and more as the conversation continue to grow globally and women continue to make contributions, there are Nigerian female CEOs who are writing checks for only female businesses. And it is within their right, it is within their right to do so, right? And that's what you have to compete with. So you cannot be sulking around. You have to double, you have to strengthen yourself, you have to pursue your own excellence, you have to develop your own leadership, develop your ability to articulate your ideas and your thoughts, develop an ability to write clearly, and develop an ability to the discipline and the regimentation to pursue a vision and achieve it. That's the only advantage you have, not because you're a man. I don't think any institution right now, right, when they are even tokenizing hiring women, right? I don't think that any institution right now will any institution that know what they are doing right now will prefer to hire somebody over another person just because of the agenda. I don't see it happening. It might be happening, but it's no longer happening as much as it used to happen. I mean, there were conversations where people were hiring people because they'd be like, this person is a man, he has a family to feed. This person is a woman. I mean, so there were times where those kind of conversations, but not anymore. Not anymore. Not anymore. They are hiring roles where they will tell you it's strictly for women. They are hiring points where you tell me it's strictly for men, it's strictly for women. And that's say every organization have what they are trying to focus on based on their global outlook, right? But I'm telling you, if all I'm able to achieve in this conversation is to drive you to take up your phone that you carry around all the time and research these words. If the highlight of this conversation is to help you pursue real education around what it means to be a man, then to me, I think I'm fine. If that's all I do with this platform, the Man Enough Network, then I'm fine. All right, so I'll take a question here. How can men be empowered just as women are being empowered every year, especially through organizations and companies? Now, there are arguments around things like this. I'm seeing the question in the comment section. If you are live right now and you have any question about being a man, your own challenges, you are within love and all that, and you are live right now, please drop the comments, drop the questions in the comments, and I'm going to see that. All right. So there's a question in the comment right now. It said, how can men be empowered just as women are being empowered every year, especially through organizations and companies? Well, so I'm going to answer this in two ways. The reason why women are being empowered this way is because there's a gap. There's a gap, or there's historically been gaps with women seeking opportunities. And now you can blame patriarchy. The easy answer is to blame patriarchy and chauvinism and masculinity. That's the easy answer. But the more nuanced conversation is sort of like how society evolved. All right. But we are finding today that, of course, the education, it's not just about giving women opportunity, the access to education. More women are graduating year to year right now compared to the last 20 years. More women year to year are graduating universities, are finishing secondary schools globally, high schools and secondary schools globally, especially in third world economics. Year to year right now, more women are getting jobs above a particular job outside of what they call traditional feminine roles. More women are getting year to year those kind of roles right now. So the reason why you will find that organizations are creating certain token roles or token numbers or certain funds for female-led businesses is because there is a gap in terms of access to opportunity from years of evolution of society. So that's the reason. So that's one reason. Now, as to whether organizations hire men, of how men can get these things, there are organizations that are as much as the organization sponsor men, there are organizations sponsoring initiatives for women, for men as well. Now, so I think there was a dilemma. Somebody was asking a question somewhere about about how years of use have made man more audacious in the pursuit of opportunity. So there's that psychological edge in the sense where years of reinforcement and traditional gender education about a man, you are going to do this. So there's a hyper sense of responsibility for men very early. So there's that psychological edge that men have in a sense of pursuing of opportunity. So we find that you see men have a higher sense of risk. Let me not say this word because I don't want anybody to come and make any weird argument with me. The higher sense of audacity to pursue certain opportunities, than say women in a certain context, right? So that makes it that gives you understandably so why you find it easier for there to be like funds for female founders and female opportunity, female-led businesses and things like that. So it's because there's a gap. So I can understand that there's a real gap, and you have to just look into societies to understand that. Now, but as a man, whether male or female fund, without any of those things, if you pursue opportunity, you will get not whether the ones that are specific for women. No, if you in the world, if you pursue opportunity, you are going to get them. If you build a business, if you find a product and service that works, you are going to get them. Not even writing grants, because that's where people begin to argue about. Any organization can choose what they want to do with their money in terms of grants or support. But in the real capitalist economic interactive space, if you have a good product, if you have a good service, everybody will buy from you. Anybody can sell. You can sell to anybody. You can make money. You can grow your business. You can grow your initiative and things like that. That's for male and female. That's what I always particularly want us to focus on. That if you have a good product, you have a good service, you will get opportunities to sell and to grow your business. That's to me primarily what I believe in. All right. So thank you for that question, Stanley Popo. I appreciate that. All right. Any more questions? I want to begin to close this out. I've been here for I think about 1 hour, 30 minutes. So I want to begin to close this out. If you are live and you have a question, you can drop. If you are live here right now and you want to, please just also, if you have not dropped a comment, please drop a comment. Please share the video, even when we are done. Please share the video on your status. It's an important conversation for people to have. It's an important conversation. It's just a really, really important conversation for I think people to just be a part of. And you might agree, you might disagree, you might have a different mindset about it. So I'm open to it. Send me a message, drop a message in the comments. I'm going to respond. I will respond. I will respond. You disagree? Drop a message in the comments. I will respond. It's a conversation that is evolving that I want more men to have. And that's what is important to me. It's an evolving conversation that I want more men to have and all that. So thank you very much for staying true. We've had at the time different amount of people watching on live and all that, so I appreciate. But it's going to be available for everybody to watch, and thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Austin, Favor, Sammy, some other people. So I can't really pronounce some of these your user IDs. So thank you all for joining. Thank you all for being a part of this, and I think I will call it a night.